all of this is gone. It's been taken, conquered by the British, and occupied by the British. Ohio is one of the last places left, and a new American army with a new American commander is going to rush up here in the wintertime to try and secure the Ohio frontier. It's very unusual for armies to be active in the wintertime, especially at this era, but the United States has to keep moving. They have to get a jump start on 1813 because they have lost so much. So the army rushes up from Michigan. They have to cross the river here to get to Ohio. And because of the orientation of the river, if you're coming from the west, from like the Chicago area, you have to cross the river here. So this is a key choke point for travel. And the Americans are going to try to plug that like a cork in a bottle. So anyone that's coming into Ohio has to do so within sight of this route. And that's why they selected this route. So we're way out in the frontier. The nearest settlement is a 2 days walk away. And out of a forest, they are going to construct this absolutely massive fortification to defend themselves on the front lines. They always say that you have to build a fortification out of what is locally available in abundance. And at the time, in the forests of Ohio, in the swamps, we have a lot of timber, we have a lot of mud. So Fort Meigs will be a timber and mud fortification. Not used to this. I'm already thirsty from talking. But soldiers at the time would carry a canteen like this. It carries a quart of water. From this location, they would have gotten their water from the Maumee River just here. We also have a well inside the fort. So if the fort comes under attack, we have a source of water if we can't get out. But the force that is here is a mixture of the American Regular Army. This is the National Army, still the institution that we have today, along with 4 state militias, all right? The citizens that have loaned their time to the government for a little bit of money and a short amount of time. They're going to be coming from Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. Those are the 4 states that touch Ohio at the time, so they will all send troops. I am dressed as a member of the regular United States Army today. In fact, specifically, this is a corporal's uniform in the U.S. Artillery. Okay? The United States wears a blue wool coat at the time, red collar and red cuffs, and then the taping that you see on the front here, my face taping as it's called, these can be a variety of colors depending on what branch of service that you're in. So I have yellow or gold, and that is for the artillery. So the artillery regiments would have this uniform. The infantry would have white trim here, the foot soldiers. The dragoons, the mounted troops, blue. The riflemen wear green. All right, so we have a lot of different visual cues on the uniform to help commanders and to help soldiers on the battlefield identify who is who and where they should be. All right. The footwear is a heavy leather. It's called a brogan, and it actually comes with a little horseshoe on the bottom at the time because it's very slippy to have just a single shot, flintlock, muzzle loading black powder weapon. Okay, a lot of terms there. This is the flint. Okay, it's just a stone. And this is going to be my whole ignition system. So when I pull the trigger, this is going to fly forward on the hammer, and it's going to scrape across this steel plate called the frizzing. And as it scrapes across it, it's going to spark. Hopefully. All right? And that spark needs to fall down into this little dish on the side of the weapon. All right? This is my priming pan. I'm going to put a small amount of gunpowder in that pan. So if I get a spark, and if it falls straight down, that priming powder should explode. And it's going to travel through a teeny tiny hole in the breech of the weapon. All right? The touch hole. I just jammed my pick in there. All right? So you can see a tiny hole there on the side. And that explosion travels through that hole, and it's going to come in contact with the main charge, which I'll deposit down the barrel. The barrel is a smooth pipe, a smooth bore weapon, so the musket ball is going to kind of roll and bounce and tumble and twist through here as it comes out, and that's going to make it a very inaccurate weapon. Because once the musket ball comes out, it's still going to be twisting and tumbling through the air, and that's going to cause it to curve and knuckle. So I can't really hit a target very far away. All right? The opposing force would have to be essentially where that wall is, maybe a little bit beyond, for me to hit it. Okay? So it's unreliable because I need to make sure that I get a good spark and it falls straight down and my powder's in good shape, and it's inaccurate. All right? But with all these deficiencies, it's still the most powerful weapon on the planet at the time in terms of a fire rod. And it does exactly that. It rams the cartridge all the way down to the breech of the weapon there, where the priming explosion is going to happen at the bottom. And I have to return that to the sleeve on the outside, so it's there when I need it for the next round. All right? I have primed the weapon. I have loaded the weapon. We're ready to go. Right now it's on half cock, so if I pull the trigger, nothing happens. All right? If I do want to fire, I have to pull the hammer back to full cock and put a lot of tension on the spring in here to get that flint to strike the frizzen with a lot of force. All right? Now this doesn't always work because, again, these are unreliable weapons. So you guys cross your fingers and see what happens. But there we go. It's a pretty explosive blast. It has a lot of kick to it, and it sends a very large piece of lead down the battlefield. All right? To be hit with a musket ball is a devastating wound. As large as the projectile is, it's traveling relatively slowly as projectiles go. So if you are struck with one, it's like getting punched extremely hard, and it's liable to break bones and then lodge in your body rather than going straight through your body. So wounds in the War of 1812 are extremely grievous. These are 15 feet in length, and the trench is dug about 3 feet deep, and the log is inserted, and then the earth is piled up on both sides, okay? The pickets are designed for men to stand at, so we have 5 tall pickets here, and this is for the soldier to load their weapon at, all right? Because I have to load this weapon at a standing position because of the ramrod, I am exposed. I make a huge target if I'm standing up. But I can use the taller pieces to defend myself while I'm loading. Once the weapon is loaded, I can turn over the shortened stake and select a target. And this creates a firing platform that I can rest the musket on and aim a little bit better. They are slanted down, so I can still shoot an enemy that's extremely close to the outside wall. Okay? But the wall itself is actually half earth, so I'm standing on the top of the bottom half of the wall, and the top half is just the timber. So the earth is included as part of the wall. The blockhouses actually sit down at the earth's level. So a rope, and that is designed to withstand incoming artillery. The ground floor would be for artillery crews to fire out of, and the upstairs would be for riflemen to shoot out of in order to defend this area. So you can learn a lot about what the Army endured out here and what the battles were like. We are in Blockhouse 7. This is an aerial photograph, so you can get a sense of the size of the fort. Fort Meigs is the largest fortification in North America during the War of 1812, and still today this is the largest wooden fortification in North America. We are way down here in little tiny Blockhouse 7. We came in the main gate and we turned to the right. So we have 7 blockhouses in total around the perimeter. We have 5 dedicated artillery batteries here. And we have the stockade wall, which is a full mile all the way around. So this is a huge place, 10 acres inside the wall itself. 2,000 troops in the beginning, 3,500 troops towards the end of the Army stayed. So it is detail the timeline of the battles that are fought here, and there are massive battles fought here during the invasion of 1813. Our commanding officer is William Henry Harrison. He is newly appointed to lead the Northwest Army. He's an experienced Indian fighter, the hero of Tippecanoe in 1811. He's been the governor of Indiana Territory. He's been a representative of Ohio as well. He's a very well-respected individual. The American Indian...
Another artillery house. One thing I didn't realize is this is really on a hill bluff. Over there you can see downtown Maumee, or Center City I should say. Pretty neat. Pretty neat cannon here. Facing the south side, or the left protected side of the fort. I believe this is the eastern face of the fort. Pretty neat. Here's the Grand Traverse of Fort Meigs. Runs all the way down the length of the fort. The overall perimeter of this fort is over a mile, with the overall area contained within the fort being 10 acres. Very hilly site, as you can see, as there's a drop due to the approaching riverbank on the north side of it. Living in Toledo in this sort of environment would have been absolutely brutal. Because of the pandemic, many of these boards have been put up in front of the interactive stuff. I have to think it's well themed. As you can see, center of Maumee, you can actually see the McDonald's from here, which is pretty fascinating. But back in 1812, this would be the high ground. And in case you were wondering, the slope of Maumee, I would say it's about a 30 degree grade. Pretty nice. Here's how the original blockhouse was set up. You have your cannon, you would roll it up to the side, fire it, and I assume you take that latch, seal it up, pull this back, more, load up the powder, ammunition, and then press it in with those mechanisms back there, and then you would open it up, roll it out, and fire it. Pretty neat to see how the blockhouse would have looked, minus the exit, fire sign, and fire extinguisher back in 1813. Similarly, the upper deck had these slots. I assume many of them were designed for musket shots, musket volleys, along with protection to allow people to safely reload it, considering the deficiencies of the loading process of the musket seen in the War of 1812, meaning people would have to send up and expose themselves to potential enemy fire. Still pretty cool to see how the fort originally looked. Here's the northern shore, or northern face of the fort. As you can see, this, after this hill, it's basically a 30-foot drop, but this is pretty well built. This must be a howitzer. Huh. Something along that. One neat thing about the cannon is you can actually date how old it is. Right there is the monogram for King George II of Great Britain, which he ruled approximately 40 years, his reign started 40 years before the actual fort. One neat thing about the cannons here is you can actually see when they're made. Right here, it's the monogram for King George II of Great Britain, whose reign started, I believe, 30 to 40 years before the Revolutionary War, so that gives you a good age of how old these weapons are. Pretty darn impressive. Here you can see another one of the main forts, this one in the northwest corner of it, the fort. Providing access to river shots and the relative riverbank. You can see these are pretty decent sized cannons. Pretty neat. Pretty cool to see a period accurate American flag being flown at the fort. As you can see, this is the Grand Battery. But there's the memorial for the fallen troops here. There was a huge wave of epidemics, malaria, typhoid, really nasty stuff. Unfortunately, there's a lot of deaths here, which outside the fort is this cemetery memorializing the fallen American troops. In addition to the fort, there's a really neat museum that comes along with the mission, highlighting the political and historical impacts of what led up to Fort Meigs, the war itself, and the aftermath. The thing is, there's a lot of archaeological evidence that's been recovered from Fort Meigs, such as stuff to prepare food, hand tools, horseshoes for the bottom of book beat, pencils, plates, even chess pieces. Pretty neat. One of the most interesting things you can find at any battlefield in the 1800s is fragments from launched projectiles. Here are some of the ones that were found on site in the archaeological digs in the last few years. Here's a look at some of the remnants, and as you can see, it made up a musket with bayonet. This is the map that was used to recreate Fort Meigs. It was extremely helpful in determining the structural members and where they went. That's a look at Fort Meigs. If you're up in the Toledo region, I highly recommend it because it's a unique and fascinating look at American life during the War of 1813. Thank you very much for watching.